This is one of the greatest demonstrations of good versus evil that we've seen during our lifetimes.
Громадяни суспільства, тут всі ми тут.
We've got all things Ukraine to catch you up on over the weekend. Friday happened, then Saturday had some more crazy things. Yesterday, Russia put their nuclear forces, Vladimir Putin put their nuclear forces on high alert. And today, now there's peace talks in Belarus. Holy cow, a bunch of stuff happening. Catch you up on all that stuff on this episode of Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from a dingy bunker completely cut off from the outside world except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. On today it is February 28th, the last day of the shortest month of the year of our Lord 2022. Got a lot of stuff to catch you up on. I'll be honest with you. I'll admit this is difficult. Trying to figure out what matters, what doesn't, what should be in the show, what shouldn't be in the show. All of these stories, data points coming in from Ukraine and what's going on over there is difficult to put together, to say the least. So I'm going to try and do my best. I felt like the best way to do this is take it through a timeline of things happening from Friday when we last talked, that happened Saturday, then Sunday, now today. So the best way that's the best way I think I could bring you all of these things. If you're taking in news other places, fine. That's fine. You could do that. You're allowed. Even though this is the best place to get all of this stuff. Try to take as best of the approach I can, the fairest approach I can here. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on, obviously in Ukraine, but also the infighting within more right-leaning, conservative-leaning personalities. So we'll get into a little bit of that. But I kind of want to get to just start off on the timeline here. Friday was interesting. So they reached Kiev. Sorry. Okay. One thing that I learned this weekend that I think all of us should now be aware of. We've been saying Kiev for how many years? 30 years. And it all of a sudden changed. I didn't know why it changed. The news media just started saying Kyiv rather than Kiev. Why? Why did that happen? And I'm not going to go along with some hoity-toity Ivy League media type now say, oh, this is the new way to pronounce it. I'm not a big fan of when they do that sort of stuff. However, it was brought to my attention over the weekend that Kyiv is the way that Ukrainians pronounce it. Kiev is the way that Russians pronounce it. So we've been saying it, Kiev, for however long. I've been saying it like that ever since I knew it came into existence. But now, because of that, I think we're going to start saying Kyiv here in some sort of solidarity with the people of Ukraine and not play into the Russians' hands. So the Russian troops got to Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, on Friday. There were a lot of people that were like, I don't know how long this is going to last. The president of the United States, Joe Biden, warned President Zelensky of Ukraine of staying in Kyiv. President Zelensky said he was going to stay in Kyiv on Friday. But this also happened later on Friday that we thought was I thought was interesting, and I wanted to get to you. Look, if you haven't already, click the little like button, click the little share button. A couple thousand you watching, would really appreciate it. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free for you, but it really, really helps us out. So go ahead and click the little like button or like the little emoji buttons. How's this making you feel right now? Or the little share button and the little share button. Would really, really appreciate that. Because people, your friends, need to hear and see the how ridiculous the UN is. UN displayed their ineptitude again on Friday. The UN has been useless for decades. But on Friday, they voted again, had a resolution on the table that would have not sanctioned, reprimanded, or condemned Russia for their attack on Ukraine. But on Friday, Russia vetoed a draft, the UN Security Council resolution on Friday, that would have deplored Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, while China abstained from the vote, a move Western countries viewed as a win for showing Russia international isolation. The Security Council of the UN is now run, currently, for another day, by the freaking Russians. So the different councils within the UN, the useless, meaningless debate society that is the United Nations, of those councils, because everything needs to be fair and everyone needs to have their say, the chairmanships of those councils within the UN rotate. And guess who just so happens to be in charge of the UN Security Council? The Russians. So there was a resolution put on the Security Council's desk on Friday, actually earlier in the week, but on Friday, the Russians, who for some reason head the UN Security Council because everything needs to be fair, even though we pay for freaking all of it, vetoed that resolution. There's 15 countries on the Security Council right now. 11 of them voted to condemn Russia. 3 of them abstained. China, I believe India also abstained, and another country abstained from the vote. And then Russia vetoed the bill or the resolution. Not that they would have done anything, but the fact that they have the power to do that in itself is ridiculous. But that is the UN. The UN is a meaningless debate society. Oh, the United Emirates and India also abstained from the vote. The US drafted the text. The remaining 11 council members voted in favor. The draft resolution is now expected to be taken up by the 193-member UN General Assembly. But look, bottom line is this. The UN is dumb. It is stupid. Hashtag defund the UN. It's a meaningless debate society that accomplishes freaking nothing. Back to the timeline of Friday into Saturday. This is from the AP. Ukrainian troops slowed Russian advances into key cities, at least for now, while the Ukrainian delegation arrived at the border of Belarus on Monday. So Russian troops got to the borders the edges of the towns and cities, big cities in Ukraine, Kyiv being one of them, and Ukrainian troops were able to slow them down. Now, the question obviously is, did Ukrainian troops slow them down, or did Putin decide he's going to take it slow and create a siege around the city and win that way? Militarily, Putin is overwhelmingly not favored, has an overwhelmingly powerful force compared to the Ukrainians. So it could be that the Ukrainian troops slowed them down. It also could be that the Russian troops slowed themselves down. Explosions and gunfire have disrupted life since the invasion began last week and appeared to subside around Kyiv overnight. Long lines formed outside of grocery stores on Monday as residents were allowed to leave the bomb shelters at home for the first time since a curfew was imposed on Saturday. Since the invasion, the UN says that the meaningless UN doesn't mean they're always wrong about statistics. The meaningless UN says that 500,000 people have already escaped the war in Ukraine. Many are going to places like southeast Poland, where firefighters are welcoming their new arrivals. The mass exodus of refugees from Ukraine to the eastern edge of the European Union showed no signs of stopping Monday as they flee Russia's burgeoning war. The UN has expected estimated more than 500,000 people have already escaped. Then they talk about the lines and how difficult it is to get through the borders, which is what it is. So all this stuff is happening Friday. Saturday, there's like a Zoom call between President Zelensky and a bunch of the other world leaders, the United States included. On that Zoom call, Zelensky said, "This may be the last time you see me alive. We don't know, but I'm staying here." And then the infamous verbiage, or the the famous quote that you're seeing floating around all of your online sources is Zelensky said to the U.S., "I need ammunition, not a ride. I don't need a ride, I need ammunition," which is pretty gutsy and ballsy, if you ask me. That happened on Saturday. Then on Saturday, this happened, and I think this changed a lot of the world's. This video alone got played everywhere, and I think it changed a lot of the entire world's perspective. This is Saturday night, and we're kind of progressing in a timeline manner here. This is President Zelensky and like not his entire cabinet, but a lot of his cabinet members in Ukraine on the streets. What was happening was on that Zoom call, he kind of talked about what's going on there. Then there was a bunch of propaganda from Russia, which I use air quotes when I say propaganda because we're going to talk about propaganda in that term and what is happening right now with propaganda among especially righty media outlets. But Russian media, Russian state media was promoting the story that Zelensky had fled Ukraine. Couple hours later, Zelensky, in wanting to thwart that fake story from Russia, put out this video. Again, if you're just listening, it's in Ukrainian or in their foreign language, so I don't know what he's saying. Okay, so hold on. Let me pause really quick because I know we're getting into some interesting territory. We're going to bring this sort of stuff up later. This is Matt saying fake elitist actors acting. This gets really, really sticky. We're going to bring this up later. But that's, I think, one of the big problems that are coming from the right, especially a bunch of the prominent figures on the right. Doesn't mean I don't agree with them on a lot of other issues, but in this particular circumstance, it gets really, really sticky, really hairy. So watch this video. This is what I think changed the course of the entire globe moving to Ukraine's side. Again, if you're just listening, it is in their foreign language or in their native language. So just watch the subtitles if you hear it.
Всім добрий вечір. Лідер фракції тут, голова Офісу президента тут, прем'єр-міністр Шмигаль тут, Подоляк тут, президент тут. Всі ми тут, наші військові тут, громадяни суспільства тут, всі ми тут. Захищаємо нашу незалежність, нашу державу. І так буде й далі. Слава нашим захисникам, слава нашим захисницям. Слава Україні!
Okay, so let me see. I think we got to address this at this point right now. A lot of people in the comment section. I'm not going to bring your names up just because I don't know. I'm not here to embarrass people. But a lot of people all over the place are saying this is all theater, this is all theatrics, and this isn't really happening. There have been a lot of photos. We're going to be fair in how we approach this, but there's been a lot of photos circulating that a lot of people, especially people that I agree with on a lot of policy issues, are now using to say that, well, this is propaganda and this and that, and this isn't actually happening. This is a global elitist war. All of that stuff is going to get sorted out eventually. What is actually happening, though, is Russia is invading Ukraine. That is 100% happening. If you don't believe that's happening, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Now, are there pictures floating around that are old? Yeah, those pictures of Zelensky in military gear, in trenches, walking around, are from like April 2021. They are old, and they have been circulating as if they are new. Here's the thing, though. And this is what I want to make clear to everybody here who's thinking that this is entirely fake, right? It's not. Part of the reason that you can't use those photos as sole evidence to say that this is fake is because conservative outlets are not the only people pointing this out. People in conservative media are not the only people pointing out that, yeah, these are not real photos. The WAPO, the New York Times, Reuters, the AP, all of your big media outlets are also saying, yeah, this is not really happening in real time. Now, why are they being pushed? Well, if you're President Zelensky, and as it was displayed over the weekend, you have a massive incentive. Ukraine has a massive incentive to exaggerate what's going on. And the reason being is so that they can get the rest of the world on their side. So when you see photos of Zelensky spreading around the internet and you see different media outlets picking up stories of bravery and heroism in Ukraine, maybe they're exaggerated a little bit, but that's also actually happening. There are actually troops in Ukraine from Russia. That's not, because they're using old pictures and circulating old pictures is not proof that the entire thing is fake. Now, maybe that's a fringe minority of the right who thinks the entire thing is fake, but it's actually happening. And Ukraine has 100%, this is again trying to be fair here, has an incentive to bolster the presence of Russian troops, or at least the storyline of Russian troops in their area to get the world on their side. Just because Ukraine is possibly exaggerating and because the media is maybe a little bit lazy in picking up stories that aren't necessarily true, like the people on Snake Island, probably not true. The ghost of Kyiv, also probably not true. Just because our media is lazy doesn't mean they're pushing propaganda to propagate something that isn't happening, because it is happening. I don't know where to go from here. So I just wanted to address that because I feel like a lot of people are jumping on this train of this entire thing is fake. And maybe this entire war is some sort of globalist, elitist reaction to each other. Biden being in bed with Ukrainian president, which is in bed with Burisma, which is Hunter Biden's former employer, and Putin is trying to take back energy. That'll all get sorted out later, hopefully. But right now, the thing that we know, the couple things that we know, Russia is definitely invading. Ukraine has every incentive to exaggerate that invasion to get the world on their side, which they have done. We don't know what Putin is doing at all. So to say that, well, it's not in Putin's best interest. Here's the thing. Dictators often don't act in their own best interest. That's part of the whole thing. If everybody always acted in their own best interest, global advances and military takeovers would be a lot different. People double down a lot against their own best interest. So that's not a good reason to say that, well, this is not going to turn out well for Russia. Yeah, that might not be in his brain right now. And then lastly, people were saying that this is a distraction. The Biden administration is pushing this war to try and distract from all of the domestic problems. First things first, President Biden has not looked good throughout this entire thing. So if this was a distraction to take away from the domestic issues, it's not a very good one. And second, the Biden administration has been swayed heavily from the start of this. Remember on Friday, the US, the UK, France, Italy, a lot of your big Western nations were not in favor of going to the big sanctions. They were saying, we'll keep it tempered down. And then over the weekend, the rest of the world, the people, the populace of the world said, no, let's hit them with the big sanctions. Now, this is not making any sort of argument to put troops on the ground, U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine, because we're not there yet, and I don't think we should ever be there, personally. But the Biden administration holding back on those sanctions, and a lot of the developed world holding back on Russian sanctions, was weird. Why would you hold back on the big things? And then, from a political standpoint, the entire world, watch this clip. This is from Berlin over the weekend. 100,000 people were protesting in Berlin to protest Ukraine. These sorts of protests that were happening around the world, including in Russia, caused a bunch of your big political leaders to flip their side, to flip on their previous statements just a day earlier, saying we're going to hold out of the sanctions, the big sanctions, and go full-blown sanctions at Russia. Again, does that mean I think we need troops on the ground? No, it does not. But there's so many things going on. A friend of mine texted me earlier today. Let me read what he said specifically because I thought it was brilliant. Conspirators and opportunists do exactly the same thing and create exactly the same outcomes. Which I thought was interesting because there's a lot of people that saying this is entirely conspiracy theory. And then there's other people that are just, this is an opportunist looking at an opportunity and how they're going to get on the front page of their news media outlet, even if what they're reporting is wrong. That to me doesn't say this is obvious propaganda. Those are two different things. Holy cow, where did we go? I lost myself a little bit. This is 100,000 people protesting in Berlin, which, again, I think effectively spun the tide amongst a lot of your world leaders, especially of Western nations, who on Friday were saying, well, we're going to hold off on the big sanctions, and then saw what happened over the weekend. And I think this was all prompted by President Zelensky staying in Ukraine and staying in Kyiv and saying, we're not leaving. I need ammunition, not a ride. All of that sort of stuff that was put out from him, and again, probably strategically well, prompted the rest of the world, the populace of the world, to protest their governments into going to that next step. In just a day, the rest of the Western world said, okay, we're going to go there. We're going to go to the big sanctions. That's what we're going to do. And then we'll briefly talk about what's happening with those sanctions in a second. But watch this. This is 100,000 people in Berlin. There's no real audio here, just a visual of how many people were out there protesting this.
Muss man politisch arbeiten. Wir sind der Überzeugung, dass es gegenüber Putin jetzt harte Sanktionen braucht. Nach diesem Erfolg aber kein Wettrüsten, sondern eine kluge und austarierte Entspannungspolitik. Was Putin seit Jahrzehnten in Russland versucht, den Kampf zu ersticken.
This is an aerial shot. There's no audio here, but look at that. This is 100,000 people protesting in Berlin. And again, there's probably varying degrees of what these people want, from boots on the ground, which I don't think is a good idea, to ratcheting up the sanctions, which now apparently the rest of the Western world is also doing. But there's that. This is maybe. Let's talk about this. So, not to repeat myself or sound like a broken record. Friday, people were like, no big sanctions. Saturday, people were like, yes, big sanctions. And by people, I mean the Western world. This is from the AP yesterday. Ordinary Russians face the prospect of higher prices and crippled foreign travel as Western sanctions over the invasion of Ukraine sent the ruble plummeting, leading uneasy people to line up at banks and ATMs on Monday in the country. That has seen a currency disaster that has seen more than one currency disaster in the post-Soviet era. The Russian currency plunged 30% against the US dollar after Western nations announced moves to block some Russian banks from the SWIFT international paying system and restrict Russia's use of the massive foreign currency reserves. The exchange rate later recovered ground after swift action by the Russian central bank, but the economic squeeze got tighter when the U.S. announced more sanctions later Monday, today, to immobilize any assets of the Russian central bank in the United States or held by Americans. The Biden administration estimated that move could impact hundreds of billions of dollars of Russian funding. Holy cow, can you imagine your currency dropping 30%? The markets, especially Russian markets, I think they lost over a quarter of their value today, like this morning, which is entirely due to the sanctions issued by these Western countries. Let me see this. So there's this. I also wanted to get to this. You know what? Actually, we got this clip from Mitt Romney. Some of you hate Mitt Romney. That's fine. Some of you hate CNN. This is Mitt Romney on CNN. But he said some things that I thought were really, really interesting. Check this clip out.
This is one of the greatest demonstrations of good versus evil that we've seen during our lifetimes. And the demonstration of courage. I mean, look at Vladimir Putin. Here he is in this behind this huge table in this big white room. I mean, it looks like a mausoleum where honesty and honor have gone to die. And contrast that with Zelensky, with his courage, with his passion, with his true leadership. This is remarkable, and it's having an impact. And I hope it makes us a better people, and it makes us more committed to the principles of freedom. Look, you recognize that in the history of the world, authoritarianism has been the default setting. And to have freedom, it requires people to stand up and protect it. And you're seeing the terrible miscalculation by Vladimir Putin causing the kind of commitment to freedom that we'd hoped we'd see?
So that was Mitt Romney on fire on CNN talking about Zelensky. I want to talk. I've got a couple quick points about Zelensky and what's going on, especially with those Belarusian talks today. Talks between Ukraine and Belarus, or Ukraine and Russia, have begun in Belarus, according to local media. But I did want to just bring this on because I thought this was hilarious and horrifying all at the same time. Horrifarious, if you will. This is from FEMA, the disaster relief people. And they put out, let me make this bigger. We're not going to read from this specific graphic, but this is be prepared for nuclear explosion from FEMA. The pamphlet put out by FEMA says this: go to the basement or middle of the building. Stay away from the outer walls and roof. Try to maintain a distance of 6 feet between yourselves and other people who are not part of your household. Okay, first couple things make sense. Go to the basement or the middle of the building. Stay away from the outer walls and the roof. Also, please try to social distance and stay 6 feet apart from people who are not in your household. Wear a mask if you're able. Holy crap, dude. If nuclear bombs are raining on our city, the last thing I'm going to worry about is freaking COVID. Read the room, guys. If you've watched any of the footage from Ukraine, people that are hiding in the train stations and all that sort of stuff, not a mask to be found. Yeah, there's some masks. But the majority of people feel like they have bigger things to worry about. But FEMA issuing statements: if there's a nuclear attack, make sure you social distance to keep yourself safe from COVID. Also, the nuclear bomb is a problem too. Essentially, says FEMA. If possible, wear a mask if you're sheltering with people who are not a part of your household. Children under 2 years old, people who are having trouble breathing, and those who are unable to remove masks should not wear them. If you're under 2, during a nuclear explosion, you don't need to wear a mask. If you're over 2 and you're with people without your from outside your household, you need to wear a mask during the nuclear explosion, says FEMA. So that was that. Let me see. There's a couple points I want to get at just before we kind of close things out here. I went on my whole propaganda rant. Just because some media outlets are lazy doesn't mean it's propaganda. There is real propaganda going out. There's real propaganda being spread through the Ukrainian state media and the Russian state media. But that doesn't mean none of this is taking place. I hope that the exaggeration being put out by Ukraine and not Russia also, but the exaggeration being put out by Ukraine doesn't lead people in the United States to think that we need to put troops on the ground, boots on the ground in Ukraine. I hope that's not where it leads, but just because there's some old pictures doesn't mean that this isn't happening. It's a real thing. It's actually happening. Just because Ukraine has full incentive to exaggerate. That's reality. But yeah. Just to get back to what's happening today, talks between Ukraine and Russia have begun in Belarus, according to local media. President Zelensky has asked the European Union to fast-track Ukraine's entry into the bloc. Fighting and missile attacks continue in multiple cities, and with explosions heard in Kyiv on Monday. The ruble plummeted a ton, which sent Russian monetary system into a tizzy. So I'm going to bottom line this here. The world seemed pretty skeptical to really, really stick it to Russia. Zelensky over the weekend, 1, chose to stay in Kyiv, and 2, made a great impact on the rest of the world over the weekend, so that the countries that were unwilling on Friday to stick the big sanctions to Russia on Saturday decided, nah, let's go ahead and do that. And now the people of Russia are suffering for it, which maybe, hopefully, can turn the tide in Russia with Vladimir Putin. So there's one of two things that can happen, right? Putin can be a reasonable person and say, okay, all right, we'll back off, we'll hold off. And realistically, he'll just wait till a later date. Wait until the sanctions are lifted and his people can be on his side again. Because believe it or not, even the most cruel, tyrannical dictators still somewhat have to answer to the people that they dictate over. If you can't control any of them, you're screwed. So either one thing is going to happen is he's going to be reasonable and slow this down, or maybe even draw back, or he's going to double down. If history were to prove anything about tyrannical, crazy dictators hell-bent on taking over the world, my guess would be the latter. But again, it all seemed to have come from one guy. President Zelensky, YouTube star, turned president, turned Winston Churchill in a lot of ways. And again, I understand there's people out there saying that this is all propaganda, not this is really happening. Ukraine has every incentive to exaggerate what's going on. That doesn't mean it's not happening. That also doesn't mean that I think we should fall for the exaggerated attempts by Ukraine and put troops on the ground. All of these things can be true at one time. So we'll see. That's going to do it for us today. Appreciate you taking the time. Actually, hold on. Last time I got to do this. I got to tell you about becoming inflation. If you think any Russians want to invest in gold right about now, I would. Inflation is through the roof. Not as bad as Russia right now, right? Specifically in this day. But inflation is at a 40-year high, 7.5%. Inflation is going to steal your savings. How do you protect yourself? Well, you invest in gold. If you text JOBOB to 989898, our friends at Birch Gold will send you a risk-free, no obligation, no nothing packet that tells you everything you need to know about, one, protecting yourself against inflation by investing in gold. If you have a 401k, if you have an IRA, you can roll those into an existing IRA. Sorry, if you have existing 401k, existing IRA, you can roll those into a gold-backed IRA and protect yourself against the government sabotaging the US dollar. Birch Gold is an A+ Better Business Bureau rated company that's helped thousands of people across the country, so they can help you. Text JOBOB to 989898. That's Jobob to 989898. And solidify your financial future by investing in gold and protecting yourself against inflation. I think I said that was going to do it. So I've been reading some comments in here, and I think these are pretty interesting to see. I think there's a lot of people, maybe they're the more vocal crowd, because in everything, the 5% of the people who are the most 5% of people on the fringes are the most vocal about it. A lot of people there's a lot of differing opinion, which doesn't generally happen in our comment section. Melanie says, we don't want war. Yeah, you're right. We don't want war. Etz says, why does Biden support freedom in our other countries, but not the United States of America? Yeah, there are a lot of variables to this entire story, and all of that is going to get sorted out later. But you can't mistake the fact that Russia is invading Ukraine. I'm going to keep saying that over and over and over again, because I've gotten a ton of messages and tweets at me and texts saying that this entire thing is a farce. Yes, there's exaggeration happening. But just because conservative outlets are pointing out the fact that some of those photos are old doesn't mean that the entire thing is fake. And the reason you can know that is because conservative outlets are not the only people pointing that out. I said this before. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the AP, Reuters, all of these other outlets are also pointing out the old stuff. again, you can't use old photos to say this is entirely propaganda and the entire thing is fake. Now, I understand that that's a fringe population of people that are saying that, but those people exist. And everywhere in between, bottom line is it's going to play out. Let it play out before we jump to these definitive, sure-footed conspiracy theories, because it doesn't help our side. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Really appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. We'll be back here tomorrow, probably a little bit earlier in the day. I got a flight to catch, so gonna be headed out probably a little bit earlier. So we'll see you then. Same place. Anything crazy happens over the next couple hours, next 24 hours, we'll be sure to have it here. Thanks for tuning in. God bless America.